But this season, you get a whole lot more of me, which I'm really excited about. And you also get a whole lot more of my co-host. On Connecting the Dots, we aim to redefine what the term healthy means by learning from experts, identifying different areas of our life that impact our well-being, and becoming our greatest health advocates.
We believe that by making small lifestyle changes, people can not only manage, but also prevent a wide range of chronic illnesses we are taught to believe are normal in our society today.
My name's Kathlyn Carney. I'm a nutritionist, foodie, author, and creator and co-host of this raw, real, and sometimes ridiculous show.
And I'm Melissa Chammas, the other half of Connecting the Dots. I'm also a certified yoga instructor, Reiki 1 practitioner, and a hustler just trying to survive in corporate America.
We're close friends who bonded over our messy healing journeys and are eager to share our experiences with you.
So come join this journey with us as we all learn to connect the dots between the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of being human.
We now know that 80% of the reason why people go to the doctor's office is because of stress. It's a stress-induced illness.
So if we want to be working on healing the body, the gut and the brain have to be worked on together.
People get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Never accept that, oh, I'm just always going to be this way, because there's always something you can do about it.
So make one lifestyle choice after another and do it with support.
The future of health looks like prevention.
It's going to be more common for everybody to have their own customized health plan.
Our health is no different than the health of the planet.
Well, it's never too late to feel great.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Connecting the Dots. It has been a while. It's been like 9 months, a while. Could have had a baby in the time from season 1 to now, but I didn't. Don't worry. But yeah, it's been a while. It's been really good. I am just so overwhelmed still by the love and support and the success of season 1. Some of you might not know, but season 1 came to be solely because the same professor who helps me write my book, We Can't Change What We Don't Know, How I Started to Think of Food as Medicine, reached out to me. I guess this was fall of 2020, and asked if I wanted to do a podcast as a sequel to my book or on a totally different topic. And I was like, how can I say no? I need to do this, but had no idea what I was doing, had no idea who would be on the show. I quickly realized what I wanted to talk about, which was all of the other dimensions of health that contribute to how we feel, from mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that wasn't covered in the book. Because as you might know, the book is really about food and using food as medicine. And of course, there's some other tips about products to use in your home and certain things to buy. But other than that, it's really food focused. But as so many of us know, there are so many other facets of wellness that contribute to whether we are healthy or we are in a state of dis-ease. And so I knew that I wanted that to be the goal of the podcast. And I just was so overwhelmed by the number of people that said yes, from New York Times bestselling authors to my friends, to my family, to professionals in the field, from nutritionists to high up executives in hospitals. Like, it was just so cool. And it was a really good learning experience. I learned how to put shows together based on a theme. I learned how to write. I learned how to market myself. It was just really cool. But I also learned a lot of what not to do, which is great. We love that. And a lot of that was because I received so much feedback from you all. And I am so appreciative of everybody who took the end of season survey that I sent out to ask how I can improve for season 2, what topics you want to hear for season 2, and what do you want next. And something that I was really excited about was overwhelming theme was you wanted more of me, which was exciting. As a person who had a background in journalism, I was so used to minimizing my voice and making sure that I was as unbiased and was really highlighting the voices and the opinions of others. And so last season, a lot of the feedback that I got was that it was very newsy, which is what my experience is in, except for instead of 60-minute episodes, I was used to doing, 30 to 2-minute episodes, but my voice was not prominent in those. And I was not very comfortable with that. I was nervous. I didn't exactly know how I wanted to be. I was afraid of judgment. And I also had a little bit of imposter syndrome. I was worried that people would think, oh, this girl who's just a nutrition student is out here talking about health to all of us. Like, why should we even listen to her? And so I felt like I needed to just be highlighting these experts. But this season, you get a whole lot more of me, which I'm really excited about. And you also get a whole lot more of my co-host. So that was a really strategic but exciting decision that we made. I am so much more comfortable when I'm with friends or family, which is why I think season 1 was such a success, because more than half of the guests were people that I knew. I don't know. I love highlighting their voices. I like sharing their stories. I like hyping them up. And I think that I do really well in that supporter role. At the same time, I'm trying to grow my confidence and have that main character energy. So I felt like getting a co-host was a really special and good way to do that, to keep that main character energy, but also feel comfortable and be able to uplift someone else. So we decided to actually have the co-host be a guest from last season. You might have remembered her from episode 8, Melissa, who talked about yoga and her experience with allergies and acupuncture. And she had such a good interview. Our conversation, I know since last season, I had to cut so many interviews. Our conversation was so long. It was like 2 hours long. We were just gabbing the whole time. And then throughout the entire season, she was the first person to text me with feedback. She would listen to the episode the day that they came out, and she would be like, I like this, I like this, I like that. I wonder if you could do this better, or she would just ask, like, why did you make this decision to put the ad here or whatever? And I still am so appreciative of that advice and feedback, and feeling like somebody was as invested in this as I was, because it literally was a year and a half of my life, from fall of 2020 to March of 2022 when the last episode came out. That's a long time of planning and interviewing and prepping and promoting and making content for. And I just felt like she really understood and also gave a point of view that wasn't just like, oh, I'm totally 100% supporting you. It was also like, how can I help you improve, which is rare in a friend. So I really appreciated that. And I just figured that this would be the best move for season 2. So I would love to introduce her to all of you. Hi, Melissa.
Hello, everyone. So excited to be the new co-host of season 2 of Connecting the Dots. Yes, I do remember our episode last year was honestly probably like 3 hours, and we talked about possibly everything from health to just life in general. And I feel like that's one of the things that we connected on the most. And it's funny because we are very different, but also the same. So like I always say, we're very complementary in our skills, but have the same values. And I think that's what makes us so successful as co-hosts and friends and everything in the health space, because we also do have so many different experiences that I think really helps us connect to different types of audiences. With me, I have a ton of allergies, injuries, all the things. if you name it, probably experienced it some way or another. So yeah, I'm just excited for you guys to hear these stories and these guests, and hopefully can relate to some of them as well.
Yeah, I think that it was really important when we were talking about whether or not you wanted to, join this insane journey with me of podcasting, was that this is my whole life. Like, I went back to school for nutrition. I do the podcast. I have the Instagram account. Now, at this point, I have my own nutrition business. And so the wellness and health industry is my whole life. And I think that it's hard for people that have a million and other things going on to relate to people who live in this space 24/7. And so I think you offer such a needed perspective on the show.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, like, for those who don't know, I currently work at a bank. I was a math major. I did not do journalism. I did not do nutrition, nothing like that. So I was just a numbers nerd. So my experience in the health space really started when I was teaching yoga, and I taught for about a year. And then also with some of the different things that I've experienced, like I mentioned, the allergies and injuries and everything. But I'm learning as well. It's not easy to always, like, sometimes it's just eating right and working out doesn't really do everything. The stress aspect, the emotional aspect, sleep. And it's hard when you have a million things going on, when you have your job, when you have your friends, your family, you have a dog like I do. Just there's all these different things that can come up, and it's so hard to just always focus on the health things, but it's also comforting knowing that there are resources out there. And, like, especially over COVID, Kath was like my biggest resource, my biggest fan as well, because there were so many things that I was like, why is this happening? Or I'm going to acupuncture. This is what I learned. She's like, oh, I learned this in this class. And then it kind of started opening me up to learning all these other aspects of health and figuring out ways that I could incorporate that into my daily life, and even when I am so busy.
It's so funny because we were friends our freshman year of college. We rushed sororities. And for those of you who are familiar with sorority recruitment, we were put in the same group. I know every school calls them different things, but ours were called Rogam groups. And we just became friends going through the recruitment process. And it's just funny looking back, we didn't end up in the same sorority. We stayed friends every time we'd see each other out. We would always talk, but we weren't like best friends. And then we ended up our junior year having mutual friends in common and getting brought back together. And it was just funny, like, we always found our way to each other. It was just always different and not exactly what you would expect. And during COVID, we like FaceTimed randomly one day at the very beginning, like this March 2020, when nothing was going on and we were just locked in our apartments, and we just like randomly caught up. I'm sure I had some juicy gossip to tell you. And that was again us connecting again after a few years, or I guess you had lived in DC and we had connected again there, but then you moved. And so lost touch again, connected again. And we have been so close ever since. There's never been a loss of touch since then. I feel like we just aligned on so much during COVID. We went through so much stress together. We were realizing our own health issues that in the hustle and bustle of everyday life, we were able to just ignore and put on the back burner. But when you're just sitting in your home, you start to realize, like, oh my gosh, like, is this not normal? And it was so nice to have someone to go through that with, even if we were in completely different states and talking on FaceTime or Zoom.
Yeah, no, it was definitely very, very nice having someone to talk to about all this stuff, especially during COVID when we were locked down. It's funny how we became closer friends when we weren't even together. We were in different states. So I think that's something that COVID taught us, and just this whole technology world, is that if you can use this stuff for good and really stay connected with the people around you,
Yeah. And I think it's just funny because along with us having those realizations of what's possibly going wrong, I feel like that's when we had our best ideas and where we were like really in that dreaming space of what can we create together? How can we prevent other people from having to go through this? And, you know, no one steal our idea, but we are going to own our own, wellness empire eventually. And when I was starting the podcast, Melissa was like, that seems like a really good step. And you can kind of talk about the research that you did. And you're like, oh yeah, this is what we should be doing.
Yeah, I feel like we have so many ideas with the wellness empire, and the podcast is definitely the first step to that, to kind of meeting all these people in the health and wellness space and having these conversations and expanding our experience and our knowledge in all these different areas, to also, as we are also going on our own health journeys and healing journeys. And as we do have these conversations, I think we're learning about more of the different things that people need. And when it comes to this, the wellness center that we will have in the future, it's something that we want to have inclusive for every type of person, every sort of healing modality, everything from working out to nutrition to, for those who know me, music is a big part of my life. Having that aspect, helping those people who work every day, like having a way to help everyone instead of just focus on one specific thing, because there's never just one specific thing that's going to help you heal. And I think that's important, to be inclusive of everyone.
100%. And I think as we tried to figure out what we wanted to talk about this season, who we wanted to have on the show, what we really wanted to focus on, like I said at the beginning, we totally took all of your feedback and we are incorporating so much of what you all wanted to hear, from skincare to supplements to emotional health to rethinking drinking. All of the feedback that we got last season, we are really incorporating now, and we were so intentional with our guests. But it was also what has helped us over the last year. What have we been really focusing on? And so we've been fortunate to have the people that have been instrumental in our healing journeys. This summer, I did or I guess last summer, once this comes out, I did a 6-month acne, liver, gut program. And I got to interview the creator of that, Katie Stewart. And that was so cool for me, because that made me rethink so much and helped heal my gut and my liver so much. And so it's really special to be able to share with you what has worked with us and some of their knowledge and expertise as, free medicine for all of you. And I know, Melissa, we were so lucky to have so many of your healers on the show this season.
Yeah, so I started going to acupuncture last year, so I guess beginning of 2021, and acupuncture has been an integral part of my healing journey, especially when it comes to allergies and healing my gut. But also I learned how helpful it was for my chronic back pain and all these other things. So my acupuncturist Karen came on the show and talked about all different things related to traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and even some plant medicines, which is very interesting. But also I did my Reiki 1 certification, and I became really close friends with the girl who did my certification, Danielle. So she's on an episode of the podcast as well, talking about a whole slew of topics, not just Reiki. And I think Reiki and acupuncture were two things that beforehand not that I didn't believe in, but I just didn't understand. And once I started to experience it and experience the different healing and honestly learning the science behind it, because I am a science nerd, it started really opening up my mind to all different aspects of healing.
We also had your favorite, Dr. Bradley Campbell, on the show this season.
Yes, Dr. Bradley Campbell. He is, I would always joke, like, my favorite doctor on Instagram said this. And he was someone who I found over COVID who would make videos driving in his car about all different health topics. But I think what was really important to me was that he came at things from a very logical perspective with science, but also talked about things that a lot of traditional doctors don't talk about. And for me, having a lot of allergies, and this is in season 1, my episode 8, I talk about my cold allergy, which is very rare, but like all these different things that kept coming up. I'm like, how does just someone have these things? How is someone allergic to the cold? Like there has to be other explanations for it. And something that Dr. Campbell would do, he would talk about different causes for autoimmune diseases. He would talk about different things that increase allergies in people, different ways to heal these things as well. So I think it's important not just only talking about the problems, but talking about the solutions. And that's really what something we aim to do on this season, is to really talk about those solutions and those takeaways for listeners to figure out ways that they can take health into their own hands.
Yeah. And something really special about Dr. Campbell, and honestly, all of our guests, is that they all want to combine Eastern and Western medicine and mental and physical health, and they all see the value in both. We have a personal trainer, Dr. D, on the show, who talks about how, yeah, he's a fitness trainer and he's really wonderful at his job, but half of what he does is talks to people, like just talks to his clients and gets to know them and praises them and helps them get to the root of like, why are you here? Why did you show up to fitness training? We have a fertility specialist, a nurse practitioner on the show, talking about how getting pregnant is not just physical. There's such an emotional component to that. We have, Melissa and I were a little hesitant to have, some of the more woo-woo guests on the show, because as I said in the intro, like I was so worried about not being taken seriously and also having that imposter syndrome, that I just wanted it to be so straightforward, so newsy, so evidence-based, so science-based. And while so many of our guests and the practices that they do are, there is a spiritual component to health. There is a spiritual component to healing. And it was something that we really felt like was going to be important to incorporate in this season. So you will hear from a medium, you will hear from an astrologist, you will hear from someone who practices plant medicine in Peru. And if those aren't your things, like that is completely fine. Like that does not have to be your avenue of healing. But we also wanted to have that spiritual component and some more of that faith-based healing on the show, because as you'll hear from our guests, they have helped so many people. And we just wanted to make sure that we are providing you all with the most well-rounded season.
Yeah. And I think, like I'd mentioned earlier, like for some people, just eating right and working out a few days a week, that does it for them. They're able to heal from that. But for others, their healing is a lot deeper and incorporates that emotional aspect, the woo-woo aspects, quote unquote. And I think that's something, like me personally, I'm learning how much stress plays a role in your healing, and how, like, it might seem like these are kind of woo-woo emotional things, but we hold so much stress in our body. We hold our emotions in different organs. Like our stress correlates to our liver. So if you're chronically stressed, it might mean your liver isn't healing as fast as you'd like, which is something I've been dealing with. And I think it's important to listen to these episodes with an open mind, because I would always talk to my acupuncturist about plant medicine, for example, and I never thought it would be something that I would be interested in. But talking to her and her experience, and then talking to some of our guests, my mind has really opened up, and something that hopefully we'll get to experience in the future. But I think it is just important to hear what's out there.
Yeah, we're really excited to share parts of our journeys throughout the season. You'll hear us ask questions that are really personal to us and briefly share part of our journeys. And we're just excited to get to know you all a little bit better, but also have you get to know us and see why these topics are so important and so personal to us. And, Melissa and I, as we were figuring out what the heck we were going to talk about in this introduction episode, I think that we would be remiss if we didn't share with you what has been going on in the last year. So in season 1, I had talked about how I'd really struggled with acne growing up. When I graduated college and started teaching, I was in a really stressful relationship. I was teaching 150 kids at a Title I school, and I lived in a completely new state and had to make an entire life for myself. And I was just under so much stress from almost every single avenue that you could possibly throw at me. And it impacted my health so hugely. I was so unhappy. I had the most anxiety of my life. I was drinking to cope a lot of times, even though I had no idea that I was doing that at the time. My skin was going awry, and that is something that I had thought that I had taken care of. There is no weight shaming, and something that Melissa and I really are passionate about is body positivity. But for me, I had gained 25 pounds of not healthy weight and was always bloated and just did not feel like myself in my body. And there was just so much going on. And so, as you heard in season 1, I discovered using food as medicine. And that was really this catalyst to my healing journey and learning all about nutrition and finally having enough energy to start thinking, okay, now I can exercise today. And okay, now I can start getting neuroemotional technique, which is like the muscle testing version of therapy is what I like to call it. So starting to work on those emotions, starting to break those toxic relationships, starting to set boundaries at work. And none of those things would have happened if I didn't have a catalyst, if I didn't have an in to the health and wellness space. And I think, Melissa, your catalyst was yoga.
Yeah. So my catalyst was yoga. I had suffered from a lot of different injuries, and that's when I found yoga. But I always say that it taught me more than I ever thought it would, and it helped me heal more than I ever thought it would. It helped me find my voice and increase my confidence within myself. And then I stopped teaching yoga when I had moved to New York City, and it was 3 months before the pandemic. I had the intention to start teaching again, and then the pandemic happened. I am still in New York City right now, but when this episode airs, I will actually be living in Miami.
Yeah, you will.
But throughout COVID and having to work all the time, I started learning that how important boundaries were when it comes to my work-life balance. I was never a morning person. I had to force myself to work out in the morning just to have energy throughout the day. And I noticed how the sedentary lifestyle of just sitting at home on a computer my body was physically breaking down on me. And I always started with my healing journey on the physical side, but then I'm learning I had a ton of allergies, and this is something that I'm still struggling with, is the relationship with food. And our second episode on the season, we talk about the relationship with food with one of our guests. And it's such an interesting perspective because Kath focuses on healing with food. And for me, it's almost trying to heal from food in a way, and learning what my intolerances are, learning how my body reacts with different foods, and figuring out how to get the right amount of nutrients when I am so restricted in certain things. And something this year that was pretty tough was I had to cut out gluten, giving up coffee. That was definitely the hardest. Hopefully in the future we can introduce that one back. And I haven't drank in about 7 months. And it's basically all these things. I've been learning that intolerances, like I mentioned earlier about the liver, intolerances have to do with the liver rather than allergies being the body's immune system. So it's figuring out all these different things that could be harming my liver and de-stressing and everything. So it's just really trying to learn all of these different things. And I feel like life just kind of keeps throwing things at you and the universe keeps pushing you in the direction you need to go. Which is part of the reason why I'm moving to Miami, because I think I love New York, have loved it. I grew up near here, but just for me, health-wise, energetically, it just, we're no longer a match. So yeah.
For everyone to really understand, because since we like really, like I said, we were friends since we met, like an immediate connection, always friends. Every time I saw you, every time we caught up, it was like we've known each other forever, but we didn't spend a whole lot of time together until I moved to DC after post-grad. And then we had like 6 months together in DC, and then you moved to New York, and then it was the pandemic. And so honestly, now I truly understand because we talk so much, but I like really forgot about your allergies. And so I remember you coming to visit me and you being like, oh, well, like I can't have nuts. I can't have this. I can't do this. And you have been such a good reminder for me of redefining what healthy is, because it truly looks different for everyone, especially someone who deals with allergies. So I feel like, to really put it in perspective for our listeners, can you just share what your laundry list of allergies are?
Yeah. So the true allergies are peanuts, tree nuts, apples, kiwis, peaches, pears, grass, trees, ragweed, dust mites, and cats. They say dogs. I don't really believe that. I have a dog. So we're not going to say that one. Oh, and the cold weather. Like I said, listen to the episode 8 in season 1. That one's an interesting story. But from there, it has been a lot of intolerances that I've developed. So gluten, can't have oats. I had a quick coffee, and not just coffee, but caffeine. So I can't even drink decaf either. Alcohol. Well, we know alcohol is not the greatest for everyone. But there's a list of like 50 other things that I've gone to a applied kinesiologist who does muscle testing, and I've had to cut out those things for now while I'm healing my gut. And those things even include like mangoes, potatoes, tomatoes, squash, like all these other little things that are pretty healthy for people, but for me at this point in time are not the greatest. So the allergies are the immediate thing that I'm like careful about when I go out to eat, because for nuts, if I have a bite of a nut, I'm lucky if I make it to the hospital in time using an EpiPen. And things like that a lot of people don't realize if they don't have allergies is like a lot of organic products have almond oil in it. And that's something I have to read the labels on literally everything, like from soap to skincare, all these things, just because of the allergies. So, and then the environmental piece is tough because different states have different environmental allergies. So loved living in DC, and cherry blossoms were always so pretty, but I hated cherry blossom season because my face would blow up. Like I would get the worst allergies. So I would never go to the cherry blossom parade or take pictures in front of it. It's just something people don't realize. And it just, yeah, it was never a fun time. So allergies are definitely tough. So if you have allergies, God bless you. I've learned to manage them because I've had a lot of the allergies since I was 5, but the intolerances are definitely something new over the past few years.
Yeah. And just, being friends with you and going through all of this professionally with you, it's just opened my eyes so much, because there were so many times where I'd be like, oh my God, I have this great recipe. And you'd be like, yeah, I'm allergic to that or can't have that. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. It was even funnier when I was vegan because like everything that I was eating was like nuts and legume based or like fruit based apples and all of that. And you would be like, yep, can't eat any of that.
Yeah, so don't worry. We are not going to preach veganism here, because I personally will never be vegan. I love meat too much. But also, like she said, I'm allergic to a lot of different things that are vegan, a lot of different breads. besides, this was before the gluten stuff too, but even my sister was vegan, and finding a restaurant to eat for the both of us, point in time with her with being vegan and then me having all these allergies, it was always just very, very difficult. So
Yeah. And that is something that I definitely wanted to make sure we talked about in this episode, because the food piece has also been a real journey for me. As I'd mentioned, the diet was such a big catalyst for me into the wellness space and starting to feel better and getting that energy. And as you know, if you've read the book, it was a plant-based diet. And it worked for me for so long. I started in 2018, and I say a part-time vegan because I was not the best when I was drinking. Honestly, those are really the only occasions in which I would stray. But I was, a part-time vegan until I want to say like the beginning of 2021, maybe even a little bit later into that. And the reason that I had stopped was because I started having health issues again. And I realized that my diet and my current lifestyle wasn't enough. Kind of like Melissa had mentioned, like the food and the exercise piece wasn't cutting it for me. And I just started to learn that I wasn't getting enough protein. I wasn't getting enough B vitamins. And that wasn't because of plant-based eating. If I had been more planned and regimented, I could have done it in a healthier way. But I was working 2 jobs and I was in school, and I did not have the time or the capacity to be meal planning, to be making sure that I was giving my body what it needed. So what I was doing was I was constantly spiking my blood sugar, constantly spiking my insulin, and it started to lead to other health issues. And you couple that with the stress of COVID-19, the stress of, having a best friend who was battling cancer, who was on the show last season, Trish. And I just fell apart, and I realized that we needed more. My body needed more. I need to be doing more. And I did not have the capacity to be making balanced plant-based meals throughout the week. So I started to find paleo. And actually I did this cookbook release program with Nom Nom Paleo. If you don't follow her, you must. Luke and I, this is a shameless plug, we have no affiliate with her. But Luke and I were obsessed with her recipes. So part of this like cookbook launch group was that I would make them and then share the recipes with everybody and on social media. And we were literally obsessed. Luke even made some of them when I was doing stuff, and he loved them. So easy. And that was kind of our first introduction into this paleo way of living. And it's still, it matched with me because it's still very plant-based. It is still emphasizing your fruits, your vegetables, your gluten-free grains, and high quality proteins, but it also still isn't including the dairy piece, which was really big, or the gluten piece, which was really big for me. And so it really felt right because, I wrote a whole book about the importance of plant-based, and I wanted to make sure that I was still living my life aligned to that, because I do still believe in it. And I'm still following everything I put in the book. I still only buy the meats and the seafood that I put in there. I still make sure that my plate is mostly fruits and vegetables and whole grains. But it just totally reframed my way of eating and thinking. And I realized that there is not a one size fits all to eating, and that you really need to eat for your lifestyle, to how you're going to be able to get the nutrients you need, and to be making sure that you are nourishing yourself instead of just being so focused on eating only the cleanest foods that are for fighting illness. And that was really the space that I was in for so long, because it was a life or death situation for my friend Trish. And like, that was where I was at. And I couldn't even understand that I wasn't even giving my body what it needed. So that was really big. And I'm just so grateful that I had Melissa, because she had been following Whole30 way longer than I had been doing this paleo situation.
Yeah, and Whole30, for those who don't know, is very similar to paleo. Probably, I don't know if legumes is allowed on paleo, but that was one of the things that they cut out. Whole30, and basically Whole30 is a diet to cut out a lot of different inflammatory foods, but the important thing is at the end of the 30 days, you have a reintroduction period to determine what things you might have different intolerances to. So maybe that is things like rice and oats, or legumes and beans, or gluten or dairy, or one of those things, sugars. So I had done that for the first time, I think 4 years ago, and it was life-changing for me. It helped with, like, I had lost 10 pounds the first time. I remember I was not bloated anymore. And one of the things that they do focus on is throwing away the scale for 30 days, which is definitely hard if you're someone who weighs themselves literally every day. It's really focused on you learning to be mindful when you're eating and how different foods make you feel. And if you're full, stop eating. If you're still hungry, eat. Like, don't count the calories, don't step on the scale. Like, you're going to go through the periods of halfway through the diet, you're probably going to be more bloated than you thought you were at the beginning, but it's all part of the process. And I think that that was something that helped me a lot with my mindset with food as well, and learning different recipes and different ways to cook. So before all of these other things that I've been cutting out, I would mostly stick to like a Whole30 variation when I would eat, and it's helped a lot.
That reminds me so much of what in my nutrition business I really focus on with clients, which is intuitive eating. And it's pretty much exactly what you just said, of like, eat until you feel full. Don't, restrict yourself and then, feel hungry. Like, we want to make sure that you're listening to your body cues. And that is something that is so important in today's culture, when we are so used to like these traditional diets and calorie counting and macro counting, micro counting. And I think that they can all serve a purpose and have a place. But, I will, shameless plug for working with a nutritionist, it's not going to be one size fits all. So if you're following this like generalized diet plan that's designed for XYZ thing, it might not work for you, and it might not be teaching you what your body needs. And that's just something that, as I've gone through my master's and started working, that I've really realized it's so important to learn how to listen to your body and your body's cues and what you need. But it is so hard when you are in a constant state of stress and inflammation.
Yeah, I always joke that I'm like a great case study for this stuff, because I have all the problems in the book. So if you can manage to help me, then you're good. But it really is just something that it's so different for everyone. And I feel like that, like she was saying, like when you're in a constant state of stress and inflammation, like when you're so worried about what you're eating and you're eating with this like stressed mindset, your body is going to hold on to that. And eating when you're stressed is not good. It's that fight or flight response. And I keep saying, I feel like my body has been in a constant state of survival mode, where it's been under stress for so long and been struggling with the food aspect, that it's holding on to the nutrients that it does have, while I'm still learning to pretty much eat what I can and get all those nutrients. So it's definitely very important to figure out what is best for you, but also to take a deep breath, because even if you're quote unquote having an unhealthy day or cheat day, like it's not good to use those words, because if it's bringing you joy in that moment, then it's probably better than eating something that's going to stress you out.
Yeah, that was one of the craziest lessons. Gosh, life just has a way of teaching you things. So unfortunately, this summer, Trish, who was on our show, passed away in July after fighting cancer for 4 years. And the first 3 years she was fighting the wrong cancer. So that was just really hard and really shitty. And you all know, you heard her episode, she's amazing, and she's been my best friend since high school. And so losing her and for the whole year from when she was correctly diagnosed until she passed away, it was just a constant fight for her life. She was incorrectly diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. You probably heard her talk about that in season 1, but we found out after that episode was recorded that it was actually acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And so, like I said, she passed away this July or last July in 2022. And at that time, I was doing the Katie Stewart Clear Skin Solutions program. And the week that she went on hospice care, I was doing a total elimination. So I could not eat. Oh my gosh, the list of things that I could not eat was honestly 6 pages long. The page that I could eat was 1.5 pages. And it was because they wanted to get to the root of healing your gut. So it was for gut healing. It wasn't for weight loss or anything like that. It was literally to make sure your gut had that time to rest and only get what it needed and get all the other stuff out. So there were so many healthy foods that I couldn't eat at that time. Along with that, though, there was no vice that I could use during that time. I could not, even have a glass of wine. There was no sugar, not even honey or maple syrup. So no cookies or ice cream or dessert to cope with. And it was so wild because I, at the beginning, I was like, oh, wow, I'm really going to get rid of all my vices during this. But it really forced me to feel everything. And that was something that I had no idea that I needed. I didn't realize that I hadn't been truly in the moment, feeling all the feelings for so long. And it was just really crazy to see that sometimes we have these tendencies, we have these coping mechanisms, we have our comforts. And when they're all stripped away and you're going through something really tough, all you can rely on is your social connections and your stress management techniques and your self-care. And I really leaned into those things. And I mean, while I absolutely hate that that's how I started to really feel all the things and focus on what my body really needed at that time instead of what I wanted to mask what I was feeling with, it really taught me so much. And I think in this season, we really are able to dive into so many different positive healing and coping mechanisms that people can deal with when they're going through some of the worst tragedies of our life. And I'm really grateful that we were able to live in that space.
Yeah. And I remember during that time when you were going through all that, you were so responsibility mode. You're I need to help her with all these meal plans. I'm going to visit her and bring her all these things. And I felt once that was over and once you finally had the time to rest was when you finally got that piece of it and you're starting to feel the emotions. And I mean, I'm the biggest person too, where I'm very good at avoiding things and avoiding my emotions and numbing my feelings. And something that I've been learning, and earlier this year, I've been dealing with a lot of different skin issues as well, which I've thankfully have never had beforehand, but it's very similar to eczema. God bless anyone who has eczema. This shit is rough. But I've been learning, and something that Dr. Bradley Campbell told me was that, and especially with the cold allergy, which is a form of autoimmune disease, which also eczema is too, is that most of the cases he had seen related to a cold urticaria were emotional causes. And similarly with all of these things that I've been cutting out and hoping that would heal me, I've been seeing all of these skin issues and going to my applied kinesiologist. We had started NET, which Kath had mentioned earlier, but it's muscle testing for emotions and therapy. And I think that there's a lot of things that I'm still learning and coming to realizations with that I need to process more and almost like release that stress in order to fully heal these other aspects, not just my gut, but my skin. Everything really is all connected.
It's been crazy that you and I have been in completely different ways. Like Melissa only knew who Trish was because she was my friend from high school, but like us both growing through these things and realizing we need to work through our emotions at the same time, but for like I said, completely different reasons and experiences. It's been cool. I mean, working through your emotions is hard work, and like as Melissa said, can be really fucking shitty. But like it's cool that we were able to go through it at the same time, and that we were able to bring in people that have helped us do that. So in season 1, I had Peggy Herzog on the show, who I go to for muscle testing, NAT. On the show, she talked about TBM. This season, we have Emily Mioto, who's a theta healer, who I found, gosh, I guess it was the end of 2021. We had met on the podcasting app, and I was a guest on her show. Now she's a guest on our show, but after I was a guest on her show, I ended up going to see her. And the main reason was because I knew that I needed to start releasing these deep-seated beliefs that I held about myself that were no longer serving me. You'll hear us talk about it this season, but one of those beliefs was like my fear of being alone. And so when that came up with her, I was able to go back to Peg, who I go to for muscle testing, and be like, okay, I have this belief that I'm going to be alone, and I have this crazy fear that I'm going to be alone forever. Where does that come from? And she was able to trace it back to times from when I was 5 years old, where that started happening, to when I was 13 years old and that happened, to when I was in college and that happened. And like these times that I've been quote unquote left or alone, that have stuck with me and created this pattern or this belief that I'm always going to be alone. And it's, turned me into a people pleaser and someone who can't say no and someone who doesn't set boundaries. So once I learned about that, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to start setting boundaries. I need to start working on this, and I need to start digging into that fear and clearing those emotions that are stuck from when I was 5 and from when I was 13, and these events that no longer impact me. Like, I'm fine. I'm not alone. And we got through them. So why am I going to carry that with me? We also have Laura Patricia Martin on the show, who is a relationship trauma guru expert. And, we talked a ton about why we get into relationships with the wrong people. And a lot of that is trauma bonding and the energy that you're putting out. And so I really had to look back on these relationships that I had with good people. Like, I wouldn't date some jerk, but why did we not work? Oh, because we were a hot mess and we didn't, take care of what we needed to take care of. And so being able to come to terms with those things and realize like that wasn't about me, that relationship didn't work out. It was just, we both had shit that we needed to work on and take care of. And so doing that work, having those conversations, finding those people that help you come to those conclusions. And the biggest piece from it is like, once you have those realizations, doing something about it and growing from them.
Yeah, I definitely think awareness is the first step to healing. Just really becoming aware of all those different things. And like Kath was saying, with relationships, it's not just your relationship with others, your relationship with self, your family, your relationship with work, and again, with your health. It's just, there's so many different aspects in life that we relate to. And it can be a common theme with like I'm a very avoidant person just in general. So I definitely see that in a lot of different aspects of things, but also like, and people talk about like codependency, like you could have a codependent relationship with someone else, but you could also have a codependent relationship with your job, with all these different things. And then you can put so much energy into your job and then forget who you are, forget some of the things that you like doing. So I think it's really important to explore all those different aspects because like we keep saying, health is so many different areas of your life, and it's really important to see where, you know, they all connect the dots.
I love that little slug of the title. And I think that's really how I started on this like second iteration of the health journey. I talked about, you know, what had happened in 2018 and how I started to heal from that. But then, as I had said, so much going on during the pandemic time and feeling bad, but like worse than I ever had before. I was having digestive issues. I was having skin issues. I was having crazy anxiety. I was not sleeping great. I was really stressed out. I wasn't prioritizing movement. Like I said, I didn't have the time to even carefully and correctly eat a plant-based diet to make sure that I was sustaining myself. And it was crazy. Last season, you probably heard Lauren O'Brien, my former acupuncturist before I moved to Dallas, she's in Philly, talk about, oh, who could use acupuncture? And she straight up was like, you know, acne is not normal. PMS is not normal. Constipation is not normal. And I was like, oh, calling me out. You are talking about me. I deal with all of those things. And like, she was the first person to tell me, even though she didn't know I had those symptoms, I didn't talk about that with her at all. She was just saying common things that we experience that are not normal. She was the first person who ever verbalized those things to me of saying they're not normal and there's something that you can do about it. And so immediately in March of 2021, I started going to see an acupuncturist in Dallas because I was like, oh my gosh, these things aren't normal and I need to do something about it. And as Melissa just said, like starting to connect those dots when you hear those red flags and those alarms start going off in your brain and you're like, oh, this isn't right. Finding the right resource for you or the right tools for you and starting there. Because from there, so much has happened. And it's been so great that Melissa has also been seeing an acupuncturist and has also seen results because we were able to share our stories and share what we were working on and share what we were learning about traditional Chinese medicine with each other. And so while PMS, acne, and digestion were my catalysts for acupuncture, Melissa's were not the same. And I'm sure she would love to share with you a little bit more about that journey.
Yeah, so I had started acupuncture to help with my allergies. And it's funny because I started going to a chiropractor in the same building was actually an acupuncturist. And then I started talking to them and they're like, did you know acupuncture can help with allergies? It's like, no, I did not think actually anything could help with allergies besides like taking Zyrtec and just avoiding the foods. So when I started going, I remember my first session, I said that I vividly remember I learned more in my first session of acupuncture than I ever have in all my years talking to doctors. And they explained why different things were working, why different points were helping you. They were explaining where the phlegm would build up, how for allergies per se, there was different, like the lung points and the liver points were weak because of my breathing. There were just so many different things that I had learned from acupuncture that had helped. And I think it was just something that it's hard with at least conventional doctors because there isn't enough quote unquote research, I guess, as it relates to allergies. And because it is considered an autoimmune issue, it's just something that we're told to live with. And for so long I had just lived with it. And it was so nice to finally find someone that would help give me solutions. And now that I've started going to an applied kinesiologist and doing muscle testing, he was telling me that you don't have to cut all these foods out forever. It's just a for now thing while you are healing your gut. And I mean, when it comes to nuts and some of these things that I would literally die if I ate, I will never have those again. We know that. But these other things that it's nice having that level of hope that, okay, I don't have to cut out gluten and dairy and all these other things and coffee and alcohol forever. Maybe if I want to, I can, but for now, while my gut is healing. And I think something else during this time that I've learned is that obviously it's so stressful trying to figure out all these things like that you're eating or what to do, what'll make you feel good and how not to feel bad during these situations. But it's also important to find those times of fun and stress relief during these situations.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that similarly to you, I learned so much when I went to acupuncture of just that when you go in there and a good acupuncturist will give you like this giant intake form to fill out, and they'll want to know everything about you from when you were born to now and all the symptoms that you have. And then, they'll tell you, oh, to me, it seems like you're having liver stagnation or whatever's going on. And then they'll give you foods, which of course, me, I was like so excited. They gave me these food lists to support the liver and the lungs. That's really what I've been working on. And lo and behold, those two organ systems are tied to grief and worry and a lot of these emotions that I've been feeling over the last 4+ years. And so, they just had such a great way of starting to explain those things. So I'm so excited that you'll all be able to hear from Melissa's acupuncturist this season, because she just dives into all of the different modalities that acupuncturists utilize, aside from just putting the filaments, as Lauren O'Brien called them, into your body. And so once I started to get relief from that in 2021, I was like, okay, what else do I need to be doing? And so I actually found a woman who did a course on living cyclically and learning about your womanhood and eating according to your cycle, which was something that was so new to me. But I really wanted to go off of conventional birth control. Again, guys, I did not have a baby in 9 months. I swear. I just didn't want to have synthetic things in my body anymore, because as I had mentioned, my symptoms got so bad in 2020 and in 2021 that I really wanted to be sure that it was not because of conventional birth control. But I was terrified to go off of that. I'd been on it since I was 16 years old. At the time, I had an IUD that I'd had in my body for 4 or 5 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen to me when I go off of this? Is my skin going to get even worse than it is? Is my digestion going to get even worse than it is? Is my PMS going to get even worse? Like, what's going to go on? And also, like I said, was not trying to have a baby. And so I really wanted to have support here. And so I ended up finding a chiropractor, Dr. Giselle Foss, who was doing this class. And it was just crazy. Like the first class, she's literally giving us an anatomy lesson. And I was like, no one has really ever explained to me what goes on down there. Like I had a decent idea, but no one had ever explained it to me and really broke it down. And my mind was just blown. Like, Melissa, have you ever had in school or anybody like really break it down for you?
No, definitely not. I feel like you just, you watch those awkward videos in school. You take one semester of health, or like 1/4 of the year of health, and the rest is gym class, and then you're done. Like there was never really any sort of explanation about that.
Yeah. And so she was like, I just want to make sure we all have a baseline understanding of this. And then then from there, it was, you know, how to eat for your cycle, what supplements you should be taking, how to exercise, how to set boundaries, how to identify your divine feminine and your divine masculine qualities, and your wounded feminine and your wounded masculine qualities. And how, again, once you identify these things, how to go from there. And so I was realizing, I think Melissa had said this before about codependency. That was like the first time I had ever realized that I'm so codependent, and that I get so anxious when I don't have like my other half, like always having that person that is like you're codependent with. And I always thought that that was like so cool and like so special to have these like relationships, but realizing that I was putting so much pressure on these relationships. And Trish was like the only person who would ever like really throw it back in my face and be like, you are expecting way too much from me. And me being like, what do you mean? But now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just so codependent. I didn't know how to be alone. And I did it again when I was teaching it in grad school with my friend Megan. And she was the one who literally had to like force me to go to workout classes because I wouldn't go by myself, because I was just like, I can't do this alone. And that has been like one of the most like liberating and empowering things. And she was the first person to ever have me like really think and reflect on those behaviors and why I couldn't do anything by myself.
And this is another area where Kath and I are opposites. I'm the type who is overly independent, who likes being alone a little too much. And we talk about this kind of in the episode with Laura Patricia Martin, but I feel like a hyper independence. I live alone right now. I love doing things alone. So for me, asking others for help and finding help, and I can be very hard-headed when it comes to that. Like, no, I could solve this problem on my own. I could fix this. And especially with like the health stuff, I'm like, I could learn this on my own. But sometimes there is kind of accepting that you do need help and you do need to ask someone for help, because we weren't meant to do everything on our own.
Yeah. And so, like I said, Melissa and I am so grateful because we've had these conversations, and it's just so funny, like hearing the other side's perspective. I feel like it really like levels us out almost and makes us realize we need to both find some middle ground here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we're definitely teaching each other some lessons throughout this.
Yeah, and the Pattern app, again, they don't sponsor us, but feel free. They like to really highlight our differences and how we support each other, which is so crazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. For those who don't know the Pattern, it's you basically put in your birth information and it takes that, like your birth chart, and it gives you information based on like your patterns throughout life and then what's going on with astrology. But if you have friends on it, it'll tell you about your relationship with your friends or if a significant other. And it is very interesting to see how they relate.
Yeah. Basically, they just say that we're meant to be business partners. So it's very affirming.
Yeah, exactly. We wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't, right?
Yeah, if it was wrong, we'd be like, this is bullshit, wrong, not credible. But that was like my next step into this. And then I did Julie Daniluk's 21-day hot detox as I was setting boundaries and learning to eat for my cycle and learning the importance of warming your body and eating warm foods, especially in the winter. And I was doing that during the holidays last year. And that was, as I've mentioned, of this rethinking drinking topic, I was doing her 21-day hot detox during the holidays. And so I wasn't drinking at holiday parties and Friendsgivings and events, and starting to see like, oh, like maybe I don't need to be drinking at all of these things, and really finding that confidence in myself to, this is going to sound so dumb, but to like be able to hang out with people sober.
I don't think that sounds dumb at all, because every time I'm out, people are like, how are you able to do this when you're sober? Like, I could never do this sober. Like, a lot of people say that, and it's like, what you're really doing is having a conversation with someone. But I feel like we've just gotten so used to masking it with alcohol and these social situations that we just gravitate as that's our comfort food, our vice. And for me, yeah, this year, I mean, I've always been this way, but like music, concerts, shows, they've been like, I'm obsessed with them, it's, to say the least. But I think, especially when I stopped drinking, going to concerts and festivals, it's easier for me than going out to a bar, because a concert, a festival, seeing live music, you know you're going to enjoy the experience. And music, the frequency is just meant to put you in a good mood anyway, and everyone is just dancing and having fun. Whereas sometimes when you're in a bar and everyone's intention is just to get drunk, it's a little bit harder to be around people who are like, let's take a shot, why don't you have a drink, what about this, what about that? And it's just learning the different places that you feel the most comfortable in, and to support yourself health wise, but also learning boundaries, because having those conversations with friends, and having them understand that you're not drinking takes a little while. But yeah, sorry about my dog. You probably will hear her.
That's fine. We love her. And that's just our life, right? We're both dog moms, and yeah. And so that was like my first dipping toes into that. Like I said, it was 21 days. It ended on Christmas Day. So I did have some wine on Christmas. And then going into 2022 and being like, okay, I have a lot more tools. I'm going to acupuncture. I'm still going to get muscle testing from Peg. I'm still eating plant-based, but we're adding in some proteins from animals, and we're also trying to eat more warm foods, and we're also trying to plan what we're eating around our cycles, which is the coolest thing ever, that there are specific foods that you're supposed to eat the first week of your, like the week that you have your period, and the week after, because your hormones rise and fall, and there's so many different things that our bodies need. And so I'm doing that, and like, okay, like I have so many tools, and I was starting to feel better and better, but not completely cured. And I was like, I know that there is just a piece of the puzzle that I'm missing. I know so much. Also, that's the frustrating part about being in school for nutrition. Like, you know so much, and you're like, I'm applying so much. I'm taking what I'm learning in school. I'm taking what I'm learning from all of these experts, and I'm feeling better, but I'm not cured. And that is such a frustrating place to live in. And that's when I stumbled upon Katie Stewart Wellness, her clear skin solution. And it was the first time that I heard someone really define having acne as part of this trifecta of gut, skin, and hormone issues equal acne. And it really started to explain why, when I was having bad acne, I was also having digestive problems and anxiety, and like how these three things come together, and how to heal from that. And so I'm so grateful for doing that program. I literally started in February of 2022 and ended in September. And so, as I mentioned, a fuck ton of things happened during those months. Some so amazing. I had 5 friends of mine get married around that time frame. We had Luke's friends, some of our family get married. We had bachelorette trips. We had graduations. We had babies being born, just like so many amazing celebrations. I graduated during that time. Melissa and I started the business. Connecting the Dots is officially a business along with a podcast. So just so much amazing things happening, but also so many tragic things happening. And even when good things are happening, I live in Dallas, and so many of my friends and family live across the country. And so to be a part of those great things, it involves traveling. It involves figuring out what we're going to do with the dog. I'm doing this diet during this time. So it's in figuring out what I'm going to eat when I'm in these places. It's having to get all your work done before you leave and making sure you're ahead so you're not stressed when you get back. It's making sure your house looks good. I mean, yeah, I can't even imagine people with kids. God bless you, how you figure all of that out. But even with good things comes stress. And then you add the layer of, your best friend fighting for their lives and, passing away. I've had, great uncles pass away this year, my friends' dads. Like, it's just been an insane year and it's been so stressful. And so as I got to the end of the Katie Stewart wellness program, my coach, she was like, you have done everything right. You have improved so much. Like, it's crazy. Like, I don't know if you'll be able to notice because the way we recorded the episodes are going to be very out of order. But I was experiencing like insane hair loss and was like really balding hair. I mean, I still like sort of am, but it's so much better now. Like, I actually have like real hairlines, whereas before when I put my hair up, it was just like straight up bald. And she was like, oh my gosh, like that has really improved. Like, my digestion has completely improved. My anxiety has gone away. But she was like, I feel like there's still this emotional component because my acne had not completely cleared. And my PMS had not completely gone away. And she was like, I really think all of this is tied to emotions. And that's kind of your last step. And so as of right now, as we're recording this, that's really what I'm focusing on and what I'm working on. And it's just been like a really wild ride and an insane journey of a year of really, my health was my number one priority, but there's so much that went on. And how do you manage the highs and the lows and trying to take care of yourself? Like, it's just been insane.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know how you did it this year. You were literally at a wedding or bachelor. You were somewhere every other weekend. I could not keep track. I'm like, where are you going tomorrow? Where are you today? What state are you in? Yeah, you handled it like a freaking champ. But I feel like that is something, especially with traveling, and you were giving so much to other people. It took you a while to be able to just sit down and I feel like give some time to yourself, which I think you needed a lot of. And I think it's, yeah, with all this emotional piece, I feel like the emotions are always the last piece because it's the one we want to deflect the most. And we don't want to admit that that's like the actual issue, especially me being avoidant. Of course not. I don't have any emotional issues. No, I always used to joke. I'm like, I'm so glad my friends have all these problems and I don't have any because like I wouldn't have time for myself. I'm just helping everyone else. But that was not a healthy way to think about it for sure. But something like Kath has been looking into all the cyclical eating and for your period and your cycle. I have not been as good with that information. Hopefully in the future, that's something that I will improve on. But I also got off birth control over a year ago. But something from a hormone perspective that I've recently been learning is that I have adrenal fatigue, but that also correlates to your hormones. So with all of these health issues, I just kept saying I'm always so tired. I don't know why. I used to have all this energy, and from work I would like just say I'm burnt out or I'm stressed, but it's adrenal fatigue is basically the official diagnosis of being chronically stressed and burnt out because your cortisol levels are really low, but it also has to do with different like estrogen and progesterone levels. And not one doctor of mine like in my life has ever mentioned doing a hormone test for anything. I feel like they don't talk about that. And even when it comes to prescribing birth controls, I've heard of some doctors will do a hormone test to see which one is the best for you based on your current levels, but usually they don't. They just give you a one size fits all approach, and everyone has different levels, and whatever they're experiencing could change and their levels could change. So having like being prescribed herbs to help with those different levels is really great. And someone we also have on the podcast talks about how migraines are related to different hormone levels. And it's such an interesting conversation because she also gets very sciencey, and everyone just thinks migraines are just headaches from lights and everything, but it goes down to really the nitty gritty of what causes it and ways to actually heal it. And I think that's something that is so helpful for others to hear as well.
Yeah. So I know that we've kind of been sharing our journeys, and it might be a little bit out of order, but that's just because one, Melissa and I talk about this stuff all the time. So we're very familiar with what each other has been through. But it's also because, as I mentioned before, we just picked these topics because they're things that we have dealt with. And these are tools that have helped us, or some of the topics we have not tried before, but we think are really interesting, like ayahuasca or goat therapy. We do have a goat therapist on the show, which is amazing. Her episode is just so good. It's so fruitful, so much knowledge, but also one of her messages is that like goats just provide you with stress relief. And I feel like that's what that episode is too. It's just such a happy conversation.
It really is. And something else, speaking of going all over the place, as someone who has ADD, we talked to someone who talks about ADD and ADHD and healing from that naturally, that hits close to home. And I'm sure a lot of listeners struggle with that. So it was such an interesting conversation. And she was just so fun as well. And I think that a lot of these things are definitely very serious topics, but they're also done in like a very fun, informational way. And there's so much accessibility for everyone too, to take something away from each episode, even if you don't fully resonate with the topic. I think you're going to learn so much from it.
Yeah. And the reason why Melissa and I definitely wanted to share exactly like what we've been going through and what we've tried and what's worked for us is because we also want you to understand that, unfortunately, for most people, healing is a freaking journey. It is not a quick fix. It is not a pill that you're put on that makes everything better. There's layers to this shit, unfortunately. And as I had mentioned in the Clear Skin Solutions, like I had done everything right. I was so diligent. I'd followed every instruction. I made it work through all the weddings and all the bachelorettes and all the traveling. And it was just, unfortunately, like I had a huge trauma that set it back a little bit. And so we needed to make sure that we were then starting to address that. And unfortunately, I share, I don't even want to call my best friend passing away a road bump, but I share that experience because I want you to know that even when you are doing all of the right things, life can throw a curveball in your way, and you just have to continue pushing on, continue to adjust, continue to listen to the healthcare providers that you trust, like my coach, Chris, who was like, I really think that this is emotional. And I think that's why you're not getting to that last step and taking that wholeheartedly and being like, okay, as Melissa said, time to address it, time to prioritize yourself in a whole new way, time to take control of this. And so for me, before I went back to like NET to specifically talk about this stuff, I spent a week in bed watching Vampire Diaries. That's what I did.
Yeah. And sometimes binging on Netflix is the healing that you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's really, we share our journeys because I feel like we've just gone through so many different things that people can relate to. And even with like me and my skin issues, I did go to a dermatologist at first, and she did all these blood tests and stuff because she did say like there has to be something underlying. And the blood test came up with quote unquote somewhat normal results, but nothing that would describe, like she checked out all the other autoimmune issues, and that from a testing perspective didn't show up. So no matter what you're dealing with, it doesn't always show up on a test. And especially being someone who's a math and science person, if it's not on a piece of paper, I'm like, okay, what is this? Like understanding that emotional side, that is really why I went to go see an applied kinesiologist, because I'm like, okay, this doctor's telling me you seem okay, just get a little bit more vitamin D. but that doesn't describe my skin issues. That doesn't describe my fatigue. That doesn't describe the bloating and everything. Like, it's time to try something new. And if this, like, that's something else to take away, that if you don't get the answers you want, and you think there's something wrong and someone's telling you it's normal, it's not normal. Keep searching, and because you know in your heart, like, what is actually going to help you heal.
Yeah. And that's why this season. So another really amazing thing about having Melissa on the show and as a co-host is that we were able to have 26 episodes. And so there's more than double the episodes from last season. Same amount of guests though, because we just like really shortened everyone up last season to make 12 episodes, but now every guest is going to have their own episode. And so we really do get to dive into their expertise and also hear a little bit of their story and their experiences and get to know them a little bit better so that you can find what the right next step for you is. Because I can promise you, when I was 21, 22 in 2018 dealing with these health issues, I can promise you that going off birth control and going to acupuncture every single week and learning how to meal plan to my cycle was not applicable, not an option, not something that I had the capacity to do then. But 3 years later, that was exactly what I needed. And it's not like I didn't know acupuncture existed. I'd gone to Lauren, who we had on the show last season when I was younger, but it just wasn't something that I was able to commit to. It wasn't something that resonated with me at the time. And so we give you all of these experts and all of these topics and this laundry list of healing modalities so that you can find what resonates with you and what's going to help you now. And so in the future, you can be like, oh yeah, like I had heard about this. I'm dealing with this issue. Maybe this is my next step.
Yeah. And I think the other thing with having longer episodes, for me personally, when I would listen to podcasts, I would like fall in love with or like get really connected to these guests on different podcasts because of their stories. I would like certain parts of their healing journeys would resonate with me, or just their personalities. And I think that that's really great about having the longer episodes, is because a lot of healers come into the healing space because they went on a healing journey of their own and they wanted to do this digging for themselves. So getting to hear what they went through to then get to where they are today is really helpful, I think, for everyone and for us as well, to kind of just have that connection piece, but then get really good, solid advice and takeaways from them too.
Yeah. So we're just so excited about this season, and we really wanted this first episode to lay that foundation for you to know who we are. Because like I said, last season, I really minimized myself, and looking back, it makes me sad, but I just didn't listen to anyone. Like my editors were like, you need more of you. And I was just like, no. Like, it's good. Like, it sounds great. And it took that end of season survey and every single person being like, more of your voice, more of your story, to be like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, people need to know who is giving them this information, where I'm coming from, and hopefully I can help you on your journey. Maybe you've resonated with something I've said from, being in, not the best relationships, or having bad PMS, or having digestive issues, or struggling with acne your whole life, basically, or having trouble dealing with grief. Like, there's just so much that we cover this season and that we have experience in, and it's just so important to us to share that with you, I think.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. Every time like Kath would be on someone's podcast, I would listen to it and I'm like, Kath, we need more of you. You need to share this knowledge. Like, you are so knowledgeable. Like, this needs to go in there somehow. She wasn't sharing that on season 1, but don't worry, we got some information this season. But yeah, and I think For me, I've just been, because I don't have the same experience as her, but I have my own experience, and I've learned that when I've shared certain things, like even with some of my coworkers or different people have asked me about my allergies, or now that there's been a lot more things coming up in the health space, more people are getting cold urticaria, which is odd, but people are asking me about it, and me sharing these stories makes them feel a lot less alone, and they're like, okay, I'm glad I talked to you about it. Oh, I didn't know that about this. So I felt like even just from conversations I've had with friends and family, it's helped. So that's part of the reason why I just wanted to share my story here as well.
Yeah. So I hope that we gave you a really good taste of what's to come. We name dropped a ton of our guests, a ton of the topics that you'll hear from, but we were not even able to come close to everything that you're going to get this season. And as Melissa said, I am really excited to be able to share my expertise and share Kathlyn Carney Wellness with you all, my nutrition, consulting, and counseling business. It's really cool. It's just starting to come to life and come to fruition, and will be only a few months old when this episode airs. And as Melissa and I have very intentionally created so many of the resources for you all, it's been really fun to be able to do them as a nutritionist and as a professional. And it definitely has built my confidence in sharing my own knowledge and expertise along with my experience. And I'm just really excited to share everything that we got with you this season.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Connecting the Dots. If there was something that resonated with you, or you simply enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, leave a 5-star rating and written review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you can be the first to know when a new episode is released. And if you'd like to further support us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow the show on Instagram at connectingthedots.podcast on both platforms. We're also on TikTok at Connecting the Dots Podcast.
We have intentionally curated resource guides that go with every episode to give you the tools, resources, and information you need to make tangible changes at home. You can purchase these guides at kathlyncarney.com/resources. If you would like to work with me directly, you can also go to kathlyncarney.com/services and book a free discovery call to decide which service is right for you. Make sure you follow me at Kathlyn Carney Wellness on Instagram and TikTok.
And I'm Melissa Chammas on Instagram and The Lazy Yogi separated by underscores on TikTok. And we'll link all this information in the show notes to make it easier for you.
We appreciate your continued support and look forward to hanging with you next week.